kuabudu, ila ni wewe Jehovah. In the previous video, we shared about remembering as a Christian that you are in spiritual warfare. You are in warfare. Whether it looks like everything is working out well, you are in warfare. It's only a matter of time that you will discover that you are in warfare. As you grow closer in Christ, you discover more and more that you are in warfare. The enemy that we are fighting is very strategic, I mentioned in the previous verse. He's very strategic. He doesn't just attack. He always understands the person that he wants to attack before he chooses which weapon that he will come with. Actually, in the book of Isaiah chapter 54 verse 17, it says, no weapon fashioned against you shall prosper. No weapon fashioned. That word fashioned means that the enemy decides to choose a weapon that targets you, targets your mannerisms, targets your weaknesses, targets those places that you find difficulty moving on over, targets the places that he can take advantage. And when he chooses the weapon, he chooses a weapon that will be able to successfully inflict injury. When you look at Adam and Eve, the enemy chose a specific animal. There were many animals. But you see, when the Bible is introducing the animals, it calls the serpent the most subtle, the most cheeky animal more than the others. Why? Because with that subtleness, it's able to convince. So the enemy knew, if I'm to talk Adam and Eve out of the will of God, first I have to choose an animal that I can disguise myself under. And that animal must already have a trait that can be usable. So you see him choosing an animal that has a trait that is usable, trait that is subtle. The next thing he does, he decides not to talk to Adam. He decides to talk to Eve, through Eve to Adam. So he talks through an animal that is very subtle. And that animal that is very subtle engages a conversation with Eve. And Eve, because he's the bone of the bone and the flesh of Adam, it's very easy for Eve to speak a word that will convince the husband. And he succeeds. When you look at the book of Job, chapter 1, verse 12 and 13, and this is where I'm getting my lesson largely from, is that when Satan was given permission, immediately is given permission to go and do havoc in Job's house. He's given permission on a particular time, but he doesn't go immediately. In fact, you realize from the kind of attacks he waged on Job is that he had been studying that family. He had been studying that family and had already known, if he was given a chance to attack, from which place will he attack. And that's how we see now the systematic way in which he decides to launch an attack on Job's family. When he was given permission, he goes and talks to the Chaldeans. When he's given permission, he goes and talks to the Sabians. When he's given permission, he already knows that there is a culture in Job's family that the children usually gather together at a particular time. And when he is choosing a date to inflict harm on Job, he chooses the day when everything fits. The children are together. The Sabians can come. The Chaldeans can come. And he is able to wreak havoc in one go. That's what I mean by fashion. He fashions a weapon. And that's why for us as believers, not just being aware that we are in spiritual warfare, but we understand the kind of enemy that we are living in. The only way that we are able to outsmart him is in Psalms 91, that we dwell in the secret place of the Most High. What does it mean? Living under the rudder and guidance of the Spirit of the living God. Allowing him to lead you, allowing him to instruct you, allowing him to inspire you, to show you what is coming ahead, and so that you may change tactics and do things that will enable you to become a wiser being when you're waging warfare against the enemy. I wanted you to be aware that the enemy will choose the battles to fight. He doesn't just fight because he's given a chance. He will choose how to come and fight you. And there are cases where people have experienced situations where because you've decided to increase your intensity in prayer, children start to become sick if it's in a family setup. Because you've increased your intensity of being serious with the things of God, suddenly there is chaos at the workplace where you're working. Suddenly your business looks like it is now dwindling. It's not prospering. And if you are very keen in the spirit, you will notice that these are just counter-effect attacks, strategies, fashioned weapons that are meant to derail you. But I want to encourage you that if you are a person who has given yourself to be led by the Spirit of the living God, then you outsmart every fashioned weapon. That's why you can confidently say, no weapon fashioned against me will prevail. Why? Because you are being led by someone who is greater than the enemy. Even when the enemy thinks he's wisest, he's always behind schedule. And we look at the latter end of Job's life, we realize that the enemy is always behind schedule. Won't you just give yourself to being a faithful follower of the voice of the Spirit of the living God? Because it's our added advantage to overcoming the weapons that are fashioned against you. Will fashion weapons against your weaknesses, fashion weapons against the people that maybe irritate you the most, fashion weapons through job positions or supervisors that irritate you the most. He will fashion weapons, the weapons that are very effective. But I will encourage you that you may be someone who succeeds in leading and being led by the Spirit of the living God. God richly bless you.